Can I have your attention, please?
Yeah, that's what it said.
We're going to open the public meeting now. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we move up our 9:15 agenda item, DY Regional Agreement or DY Agreement discussion to the beginning of the meeting before public comment, please.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to advance the 9:15 item DY agreement discussion. Does anyone want to have any further discussion before we vote on that? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, it's advanced. Before we get to public comment, we know from just the past history of people coming forth and speaking out on the school issue, and also from reviewing various emails that were sent in this week, encouraging the board not to go forward with the lawsuit. We thought that it would be, in all fairness to the public, to announce the decision that the majority of this board has made with respect to that lawsuit before people get up before the microphone and try to tell us why or what action we should or shouldn't take. The majority of the board has voted to proceed with the appeal. Our town council is instructed to file the appeal, and most likely it will be filed in the court this week. So, does anyone else on the board want to comment further on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just feel compelled to speak. I did not support filing the appeal. I believe that we need to take all the time, not all the time, but we needed to continue this dialogue between the towns and the school committee to find some way to reach a consensus to resolve this. Now, I understand there were different points of view and perspectives on this, and I understand that and respect it. But I think this is it's the wrong way to go, and I think we have yet to fully understand and comprehend the consequences of this. Obviously, I'm very disappointed at the status of things, but like I said, I think it was important for us to use every day, every minute, every moment possible to see if we could find some way to come together to reach an agreement and try to resolve this. So those are my thoughts.
Well,
Tracy.
I guess I'll speak too. Mark and I are in agreement. I also voted against the appeal. I'm sorry. You know, it's a very, very difficult position because we're elected to represent the people of this town. And by originally filing the appeal, I felt that they didn't have a voice. Unfortunately, throughout the process, we've hit roadblocks, and I completely respect the board members and what they've done. I think, at first I was willing to take the risk knowing that money, the reimbursement was there, but at this point in time, I feel that we need to move forward. It wasn't this board that put us in this position. It was the school committee that put us in this position. We did the best we could, in my opinion, to try to protect the taxpayers. But at some point in time, for the district, our relationship with whatever that might be with Dennis, my fear really is that with this appeal, the years that we've had of heartache with our partner will continue into the future. And unfortunately, I feel that the agreement is unfair. And unfortunately, I believe, based on this appeal, I think we'll be stuck with that unfair agreement for a very long time. So, as well as, you know, I know during my reelection, one of the things that people talked to me about was this very issue. And the thing for me was I wanted to really hear from the public and know what the public wanted. And we never really had a public forum to discuss where we were going to go. Where does that leave us? What is it really that the people want us to do? I'm not confident that deregionalization is the best answer. So it's, like I said, it's a very difficult, there's no win in this for us in either way. You know, we don't file the appeal, we go forward with it. Obviously, it was the majority of the board, so we will be going forward with it. But like Mark said, knowing the repercussions or the other options for our taxpayers, I think, has been left unanswered for me. So I wasn't 100% confident in that option and losing the money at this time.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll proceed to public comment. Yes, sir.
My name is Jim Cullen, District 1. It appears to me, I was about to say at the beginning that I was my last chance to encourage you not to file the lawsuit, but I said, since it appears to me you have no intention of doing that, I would like to say a few things to get on the record, because it's so hard to find a way as a citizen to get on the record. And I want to state that clearly. In reading past minutes of the school building committee, I saw that a select board member actively participated in meetings and voted to support motions to move the project forward almost, if not every single time. I don't recall any comments made by board members at the 2018 town meeting against the school project. I don't recall the board taking any vote in 2018 in opposition to the project. In fact, only personal statements were made against it, but never a formal vote. The only vote taken was to move ahead with a lawsuit over whether or not a district-wide vote on the project was legal. We all know the lawsuit was used as leverage to renegotiate the regional agreement. You have, in fact, stated that publicly. As I stand here tonight, we still have the same regional agreement we did when the suit was brought. The only things the suit has accomplished is more animosity among the parties. The town's reputation as a fair dealer, in my opinion, has been significantly harmed, and some are calling for withdrawal from the agreement, even though no feasibility analysis has been shared with the public. Most importantly, we are about to lose $44 million in state support for a very important school project that our educational system needs and deserves. You may see yourselves as victims in this drama that has gone on far too long. I choose to see you as perpetrators, not victims. And to just comment to what Tracy said, I concur with you that, in my opinion, there was very little public discussion about the project and the implications. I came to 2 of the 3 public meetings towards the end of 2018 before the vote. I don't recall, I know Dan, I think, made a presentation with PowerPoint slides. There was nobody here from the architects. It was not what you'd normally call an educational presentation. I know there was a while ago, because in my reviewing the minutes of the school project, there was a very thorough comparative analysis done by whatever, Eastman and somebody, whatever, whoever the architects were, that I found to be very educational and informative. I don't know how many citizens of Yarmouth took part in that, but it was important for me to get these things on the record, because, again, we're on television, we have minutes taken. It's just very frustrating to me to find opportunities to engage in a public forum, to educate, have our policy differences discussed. Norm and I had extensive emails back and forth and phone conversations, but that's not a full public meeting, obviously. So I'm disappointed. I'm not surprised. And I think you're right. You're going to live with the consequences of this for a very long time. And I'm very disappointed that it doesn't sound like you know what your way forward is going to be.
Mr.
And you better
Chairman,
get at it pretty quickly. So I'll stop there.
I just
Thank
want to
you.
address a few things. I just want to say for the record, a few points that you made. This has been a really long process, and the people of this town supported a $750,000 article for a feasibility study. I'm going back that far because they understood the need to invest in our schools, and they supported that. This board, after that vote was taken, was very concerned, way back then, about it being taken out of our hands, and out of our hands isn't the right word, but we wanted it to be a feasibility committee. Even back then, you can check the minutes. We didn't want it to be a building committee because we knew once this happened and a different committee was created, exactly what happened, okay? Dennis had 50% of the voice of spending our money and creating a joint school, okay? This board, I believe, whether we took a public vote or not, was supportive of the concept. But from the very, very beginning, many years ago, should not be a surprise that we were very, very clear that this building together would only be supported under a new regional agreement. Now, why would Dennis want to change? To say that we didn't negotiate in good faith, I think, is a disservice. I've been in the negotiations. I know we've spent a lot of years negotiating. They don't want to pay more money. We cannot help. We cannot make them change what they don't want to change. To say that this board didn't negotiate in good faith, I think is...
Didn't say that, Tracy.
Well, I'm sorry, you made some comment towards that effect that we weren't being fair, because I don't think that we have tried every step of the way. Even recently, we asked them for mediation, which they don't even agree to that. We can't make somebody do something they don't want to do. And while I may be in the minority on my vote, I feel very strongly that we have a partner, and we've said this from the beginning. We're going to build a school with somebody who doesn't, it's like entering and extending a marriage with somebody that doesn't want to pay their fair share, but let's go buy a house. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So here we are. You're right. We've gotten nowhere. We have no authority. We have no ability really to make them change their mind. So you can't blame the board and the people of Yarmouth for saying, wait a minute, time out. And to say the people of Yarmouth may not support education, that is so not true. They supported, I'm not talking about you, I'm not talking about you, but I'm sorry, no, you can say something, and it's not your comment, but I'm reading some of the emails in my mind from today, and they're like, oh, Yarmouth doesn't support education. Yarmouth supports education when they know it's a good thing. They supported the override. They knew that was a good thing. They voted against the school. The people of Yarmouth voted against the school. The people that want the school forget that. We have an obligation to represent them as well. They had no voice in this process. So as much as the situation that we're in, we may not have made progress, but at some point in time, we need to decide if we have a partner that wants to be our partner and pay their fair share or not. And that's a discussion that we as a community have to have. Either way, regardless if it's this school, and I know it frustrates people, we will invest in our facilities. We will. So we may not have a concrete plan at this time, but I'm sure that this board will commit to investing in their school buildings.
Anyone else from the public?
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. I'm a little disappointed that it wasn't a majority vote, full board.
You weren't
Mark
the only
Was a
one.
Tracy.
majority. You mean in
I mean,
the vote?
a full board vote, unanimous, keyword. I'm disappointed in you, Tracy, for changing, Mark. This law is not about the funding of any schools. Now, I've been talking to teachers who are teachers in the school system. They're coming forth and telling me, and I will not mention names, that we don't need a new school. They're the ones that are doing the work. You know, I'm retired military. You learned as a manager to listen to your troops. Your troops are in the field. The teachers are exactly that. They're in the field. You listen to them. High school's the high school itself is being underutilized. All right? Mark, I think you agree to that. People have shown it. All right, as far as the lawsuit goes, this has very large implications statewide. It's just not here in Cape Cod. This is statewide, where a school district can take the vote of an independent town and merge it, when it doesn't say anything about that in the law. I thought the judge was wrong by dismissing it. This case should and must be heard. Let's get to the facts, get people on the witness stand, and start asking questions. That's how you get to the bottom of things. Now, I read in the paper that the Finance Committee chairman's upset. They won't approve of anything of this new article they got on the 23rd. Well, it's up to them to come across and fund it, their portion of what the school committee has assigned to them. If they choose not to, they choose not to. We have funded our fair share, and in a lot of cases, we've funded more than our fair share over the years, especially with these overrides. And I, as a taxpayer, and I can represent a lot of taxpayers in this town, are seeing our taxes going way too high. Way too high. And it's time, it's got to stop because of the schools. All right, so I commend the rest of the board. I think it's the right thing to do. Continue with the appeal. I hope the town attorney does an excellent job, which I'm sure he will, in filing this, and the appeals court will hopefully rule that the case should be heard and overrule the judge. All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Vita?
Vita Morris. Tracy, I am so glad that you brought up the feasibility study as against a building situation already. Now I understand what's going on in, or what feasibility study is supposed to be. When I was reading the article on Nauset about 10 days ago or so, I said to myself, gee, I don't remember our group going through that kind of those kind of steps, you know, and it seems like the right thing to do. You make some decisions ahead of going into the details of building or what have you. And so you're absolutely correct. I guess we never had a feasibility study. We just jumped right into the building phase of it. And I'm very glad that you brought that up, because I couldn't understand what was going on. And apparently, Nauset is doing it the correct way.
We were told that we weren't allowed to have a feasibility committee, that the MSBA wouldn't allow for it. You had to constitute a building committee. And so that was the superintendent that constituted the building committee and then populated it. And then, obviously, the joint school came after that. And
yeah, but as I said, I'm very glad that you brought it up.
We wanted to have a feasibility committee. We wanted the results of that feasibility study, and then to decide whether or not we wanted to move forward with a building. But we were told that that's not the way it could work. So. And
I'm glad, because the public now, if you want to go back to the June, I believe 6th, it's a Saturday article on how Nauset is proceeding. I mean, they're taking an overall look on the whole campus and everything, and making some decisions, you know, propositions anyway, about whether we do this, whether we do that. You know, there are different things, and that's how you make the, you know, before you jump into the details of a particular building or something like that. So I'm very glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Mike, I'd like to say a couple things.
Okay, before I go to you, Norm has a couple of remarks he'd like to make.
Yeah, I'd just like, I'm really torn with this decision. I think, you know, to constantly be in a battle with Dennis is not the way I'd like to see things go. And to have that characterized, and I'm not saying Jim, that you did that, but I think other people have our position characterized as anti-school is really a disservice to the community first and to the select board. And I want to make a comment about the building committee, because I served on it. Eric Tolley did also. And Eric left the committee about halfway through. And I won't go through his rationale. He's not here this evening. He could explain that himself. When I got to the committee, there were 4 or 5 alternative sites selected. The decision had already been made not to move forward with renovation of Matakes. And numerous times I brought up to the committee the need to have a regional agreement and to have that addressed. And I was repetitively told that's not part of this committee's concern. That's something totally different. And I wrote letters, emails, encouraging the building committee to take a strong position, and encouraging the school committee to take a strong position with regard to the regional agreement, to move that forward so that the building committee's recommendations could be viewed under the light of a new regional agreement. I'm not saying those recommendations or comments were ignored, but frankly, the school committee did not even act for 3 or 4 months on a proposal we put in front of them until they were sued. The school committee did not act, and they had an opportunity to do that. When the school committee did create an agreement, and I give credit to Brian Carey, Joe Tierney, and Brian Sullivan, the subcommittee that worked on the agreement, this board supported that agreement and supported it at town meeting. And the school committee supported that agreement. We gave Dennis the opportunity to say yes to an agreement that would have resulted ultimately in the building moving forward. They declined to do so. So I think it's important to recognize where the responsibility is for this situation. This board and the school committee stood up and said, yes, let's move forward, and here's the framework to do it under. And I think, unfortunately, that hasn't occurred, and I recognize there's a lot of unfortunate negativity between the two towns that goes back a number of years, but we can't do anything about that at this stage. I think we did our level best, and I'm talking about the town of Yarmouth, the select board, and the school committee. We did our level best to move things forward. And but as it stands at this point, we're representing a significant majority of voters in town who have said, no, we don't want a new school commitment under the terms of the existing regional agreement. They recognize it's not fair, it's not equitable, and it's obsolete. And that needs to change. It's unfortunate that this has taken so long and gotten dragged out in the newspapers and elsewhere. But that's where we are now, and we have to deal with it. And I don't like it. I don't like constantly being in battles. I'm tired after this has been going on 8 years. 8 years. And it's gotten most heated in the last 2 years, but 8 years of discussions. And unfortunately, we have an agreement that was constructed that contains no requirement for Dennis to come forward and negotiate in good faith. There are no provisions in the agreement requiring that. And I think there's been numerous quotes from the Finance Committee chair as well as others. We have an agreement. That's what we're sticking with. And so it says to Yarmouth, we don't care what you people think. You're stuck with the agreement. Well, unfortunately, that continuous dialogue has led us down this path, and I think people should look to Dennis. Look to Dennis for the responsibility for where we are today.
Before I go on to the next speaker, I just comment briefly. I won't repeat everything Norm said other than to say that I'm in agreement with him. Negotiation involves give and take. It involves significantly more than one party just saying no to every proposal that comes along. We started off, Norm and I were on the negotiating committee and this latest round, and we were pursuing a potential 50-50 split of the capital costs of the new school. Dennis said no. Then ultimately, we went to a 60-40 split, which I frankly would think is very fair. And Dennis said no. Then the school committee came up with a proposal of a 65-35 split in Dennis's favor, with a 35% allocation for operational costs phased in over 5 years. The Yarmouth Board of Selectmen supported that. The town meeting in Yarmouth overwhelmingly supported that. And at that point, Dennis was empowered to end all of this. If Dennis had passed their part of this at town meeting, we wouldn't be having this discussion today. What would have happened would be that the school would have gone forward on a 65-35 basis, and that the operational costs would have been divided 65-35, with that last 5% being phased in over a 5-year period. And they said no, they voted against it. So is that what your concept is of negotiation? Is that what your idea is of give and take? It's not mine. That's my view of saying no. And that's really the response that we've got throughout this. If you look at the very last vote that was taken, the school committee, the Yarmouth Board of Selectmen, and the Yarmouth voters were all lined up to go forward. And Dennis, as I said, they had the power to make this happen, and they said no. So I don't really know how much more people can expect from us. We'll take the next speaker.
Roby Whitehouse, Waste Management Superintendent. I am going completely off topic. I hope it's okay, and I'm really glad
sorry, you can go with.
Great. And in the vein of education, I'd just like to let you know that some students are coming from very far away to visit Cape Cod, and we always have visitors coming here to see our beautiful beaches, our wonderful environment, and certainly Yarmouth is right there among the top. So next week, as a matter of fact, on the 23rd, we will have some visitors from Africa. Some young leaders who are interested in public works are going to be coming to tour our waste management facility. They are fellows who have received full scholarships from the Mandela Foundation, and they are staying at the Bridgewater campus, and they are coming down for the afternoon just for a tour. They are going to be 30 in total, and they are learning all about public works. So it's something to be celebrated as far as education is concerned, and are coming from a very long distance away, and we're very excited to have them. And again, in regards to education, we are doing an information session on excuse me, I want to consult my notes, make sure I get it right for anyone here as well as anyone at home. July 27th from 9 to 12 at the Bridgewater School, which is just across the street from our state police barracks. Anything to do with public works. Anybody has any questions about recycling, about our new public works building, about water, we are very interested in hearing your comments, and we would love to have a conversation with you. So that's all I had. Thank you very much for the
Thank you. Anyone else? Joe?
Thank you. So you can assume that I'm disappointed in the decision. I think it's a bad call down the line. You know, we talk about consequences. I think the consequences are going to be dire. Besides the fact that, you know, we're trying to work, you know, everybody likes this idea of foundation enrollment. Now that this is going forward with this appeal, I'm not too sure that Dennis is going to want to go around and discuss this anymore. Since we have a living document, a regional agreement document that states this, which I agree is not fair and equitable. I agree. One of the first things I did when we found out that we got in for the building project, the MSB accepted us into their program. I went to Peter Johnson-Staub, who was then the acting administrator, and I said, Peter, we have to take care of this regional agreement. This is not going to work unless the regional agreement is made more fair and equitable. And he agreed. We started moving forward on it. You know, believe it, I don't know what happened with it, but you know, it didn't move forward, I guess, as fast as we could have. You know, I really believe the consequences for the town of Yarmouth and the taxpayers and the students, more importantly, is going to be dire, because we're going to be looking at overrides in the town of Yarmouth much, much higher than we'd passed last town meeting, because of the fact we're going to be tied into this regional agreement the way it stands for a while. I believe there's only one really way out of this. The second thing is, as you know, Matakes is falling apart. I don't care if people think that it's not. As chairman of the building committee, one of the things that we did in our first phases was to look at renovation versus building, versus, you know, keeping the school in one place. And that, unfortunately, because of the MSBA, that's what we had to do. We couldn't, it had to be that way. If we wanted the 44 million, that's what we had to do. So we looked at the feasibility of renovating the school. That school is in dire, dire need of replacement and repairs. Now it's up to the town of Yarmouth and the town of Yarmouth taxpayers to foot the bill for these repairs. So I hope you expect, and I hope you will support, when we come forward as a school committee for millions and millions and millions of dollars of repairs just to the Matakes School. I hope you're prepared for that, along with having to pass big overrides this year. I just think it's going to cost the town of Yarmouth, in the long run, a lot more than it would cost to build a 4th through 7th grade building. Again, you folks made your decision, and that's what you're going to have to live with and your legacy for the rest of your life. And I'm sorry to say, but I don't think it's going to be a very good legacy. Thank you.
Brian?
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. Brian Carey, DY School Committee, elected in Dennis, but I am chairperson of the Regional School Committee Rewriting Agreement Committee. I came here hoping to clarify the invitation that was extended to you about meeting on Thursday at 4 o'clock, so we could put parties from Dennis and Yarmouth together, and hopefully before a deadline of July 23rd or 25th, depending on which one you want to choose, come up with something that both towns' boards could agree with in principle. I feel your actions this evening undermine that, and I'll still be there at 4 o'clock on Thursday. Not sure why, but I think your decision is preemptive. I think it's too early. I think there was opportunity to find a solution. I disagree with Mr. Holcomb wholeheartedly in that there wasn't an agreement in place. What you have effectively done this evening is turn down over $600,000 in money that you would have gotten if foundation formula was implemented. And I think that undermines the Dennis Town meeting on Tuesday as well. One thing that is very evident to me, and not sure about anybody else, but this vote that you announced on could not have been taken tonight. It had to be done previous to this evening. Because if it was taken tonight, evident by your speaking, it would be a split vote and the appeal wouldn't go forward. So I think that's something
I didn't say one way or the other when the vote was taken.
I understand, but there's only 4 of you sitting here this evening. Dennis has an offer on the table, or has an offer on the table of agreeing to foundation formula. For them, they would have picked up $311,000 this year, and would have passed at a special town meeting foundation formula, which have meant an override for the town of Dennis next year. Unfortunately, I think your actions tonight shift that override from Dennis to Yarmouth. And that's pretty much fact. You know, I appreciate Mr. Holcomb and his words of kindness towards me and the subcommittee. That wasn't the same tone that you took on June 4th when you said the school committee was responsible for it not passing at the Dennis Town meeting. I remember that evening because I watched the tape. You blamed the school committee. It was really the lawsuit that undermined this whole process. The one thing I'm fairly good at is looking in a mirror and holding myself accountable. I think it's time for this board to do that. I feel bad for this board in some ways because you are now going to have to own what you just did. And one thing I want to speak to is Tracy's. You know, Tracy, we believe that we're supposed to represent all the voters. I truly believe the town of Yarmouth supports education. I really do. And I don't think you should listen to the dozen or 6 or 20 emails you get that say you don't support education. The town of Yarmouth does support education. This process has been undermined from the very beginning. People will use those words to try to make their point. I believe both towns support education. I believe Dennis would have supported foundation formula. And the foundation formula, in essence, is to pay for the students that live within its borders. That is a fact that both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee from Dennis, that we always refer to, would have supported. They would have supported foundation formula, paying for their students. And I don't think that's going to go forward for much longer. Tuesday, we have a special town meeting in Dennis. I will fight for that position. I will do the best I can to pass it. If it doesn't pass, it is likely to be cuts to the district, which will affect the students in both towns. Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate you allowing me to speak. I know it's not necessarily status quo. I've tried to be respectful. I disagree with your position this evening, and I think it's evident that that vote wasn't taken this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sharon Weimer, and I have been watching this for a few years, and I don't envy the position that you have all been in for these few years in terms of everything you've tried to do for the past couple years has been tried to get some type of negotiation going, and it's just followed prior years' failures of getting a response from your partner. Last fall, the town of Denison many of their, I think a number of their selectmen indicated they fully are aware of how important it is for them to pay for their own children and not leave it to the Yarmouth taxpayer. And that was well before the Yarmouth suit. That was back in the fall. And nothing was ever done by the town of Dennis, and they simply could have just added an addendum. You all could have just agreed to addendum to the regional agreement to allow foundation enrollment, but never they come forward to do that. The other thing I think I want to say is that it's unfortunate that, you know, this has happened. You've gone through it. I have empathy for all of you on the board, but I am reminded that the townspeople voted last December over 57% no for this building. And there I would like to share with you, because I was involved with the recount, some of the reasons that I discern from talking to people, that there was not only those people that were understanding of the regional agreement problems, but there are people that were very upset with the price of the school, mixed with the declining population, and didn't feel that that was fully vetted in terms of, for instance, a $2 million field, et cetera. So those are the types of comments that I also received. The other third issue was the very fact, and what's amazing to me is that the town of Dennis was equally vociferous on this. They were very, very upset with the school committee for not going through a town meeting process. Those three issues is what I learned from the recount process. And while everyone focuses on the regional agreement, there were many other issues that people were disliking about this process, including the feasibility study that was stolen from Yarmouth. And that's how Yarmouth voters feel about the feasibility study of $750,000. And so it's unfortunate that all of this has occurred, but aren't you all tired of this? So isn't it enough is enough? And so I'm glad you've taken a position finally, so that we can now move forward and try to come together again. Maybe it won't happen, but we've got to find out if we can, and start working on our responsibilities to the schools. And the reason I was always nervous was the very fact of operational budgets, because Yarmouth has stepped forward, I don't know, 3-4 years now, for an override to support the schools, paying for Dennis children, I might add, in some of that. So I don't give much hope for it to continue forever. So we as a town are really going to have to look at that as well. And it was alluded as to what option that becomes. And maybe it does become deregionalization. At some point, enough is enough. And Yarmouth has gone on too long with an unfair regional agreement, with taking away the school decision that we made as a town to do a feasibility study first, and to not use, the third issue, to not use the town meeting to explore that possibility of a building. There are so many issues wrapped up into this that it's so hard for people to see that haven't maybe followed everything you've been doing, and really don't know the extent to which you have bent over backwards trying to make this work. So I applaud you for all your hard work. How it's been portrayed has not always been correct in my mind, and there are various issues to this. And I thank you for doing it for taxpayers in Yarmouth. I am concerned about education and operational budgets. Town of Dennis, hopefully, because they've always supported since last fall, foundation enrollment, should be very happy. And actually, I'm surprised that they're not supporting now the lawsuit, which is the very thing that they did not want was to go to town meeting, the school committee to not go to town meeting. It's a curious world that we live in. So, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Next item is the tax rate classification hearing.
Good evening. My name's Andy Machado, and I'm the Director of Assessing for the Town of Yarmouth. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the Board of Assessors who were unable to be here this evening. Their guidance and experience that they've provided me throughout the year is greatly appreciated, and that is Joe Sullivan, Chairman, Dr. John Sarajan, and Stephanie Miller. I'd like to thank you all. I truly appreciate the job that you do. The reason that we're here this evening is that we are currently in the process of setting the tax rate, which we'll be doing around this time each year in order to send the first half tax bill around mid to late August. After the budgeting process and town meeting take place, the next step in the process is for the assessors to determine, through real estate market activities, what the value of all property in the town should be. Once the values are computed, they're reviewed by the Department of Revenue for approval and certification. And our values have been submitted, and approval was received on July 9th, which brings us to why we are here this evening. Towns that are certified by the Department of Revenue as assessing at full and fair cash value must decide whether or not to tax all classes of property at the same rate, which is commonly referred to as adopting a factor of 1, or to shift the burden among the major property classes. You, as our local officials, have the option of shifting the tax burden to the commercial, industrial, and personal property class anywhere from 1 to 50%. This would create two different tax rates, one for the residential class of properties and one for the commercial class of properties. In conclusion, I will tell you that to date, the Town of Yarmouth's policy has been to select a factor of 1 and to reject the residential and small commercial exemptions. And also, the Board of Assessors voted at their July 11th, 2019 meeting to recommend to the Board of Selectmen a factor of 1 and to reject the residential and small commercial exemption. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have. I will let you know that I have 2 pieces of paper that I'm hoping to circulate and get your signatures before I leave here this evening. The Department of Revenue is waiting for these with bated breath. They will be looking for them tomorrow morning when they sign on to their computers.
Mr. Chairman, this is a legal hearing. We should read the legal notice into the record.
Do you have that notice? Is
Right
it?
here. I can read if you'd like.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Andy, I don't mean to stop
No
you.
problem.
I just want to make sure we do it the right way.
Right.
Under Chapter 40, Section 56, as amended by Chapter 369 of the Acts of 1982 and Chapter 79 of the Acts of 1983, the Town of Yarmouth Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on whether the Town of Yarmouth should implement the Tax Classification Act. Said hearing to be conducted on Tuesday, July 16, 2019, 6 p.m. at the Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth, Mass. At the hearing of the Board of Selectmen, we will hear testimony as to what will be the residential factor, which will determine the share of taxes each classification of properties will pay, what will be for open space factor, and whether to adopt a residential or small commercial exemption.
All right, is there anybody in the public that wants to be heard on this before I go to the board? Not surprised? Okay, Norm, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you, Andy, for the presentation. On the attachment that you included, there's, it says example based on fiscal 2018 values. Can you just explain how this schedule works?
Certainly. This is actually based on the 2020 values that were just approved. So that is indeed a misprint. And basically what this is illustrating is that if you choose the maximum shift of 50%, the commercial and industrial and personal property tax rate would go from $9.77 up to $14.66, while the residential tax rate went to $9.32.
Okay, so the impact of that, of going from 977 to 932, would be is the $385,600?
Is the average residential value, and that would be
That's the
result in
average.
savings,
That's the average,
residential value,
okay.
single-family residential value. It would result in $174 savings
Annually, right,
annually.
okay.
And that same $385,600 valuation would result in a $1,886 increase to any commercial, industrial, and personal property tax that was assessed at the same value.
How does, can you, I'm not following that exactly. Can you explain?
Shifts it.
Because
You're
what
actually-
is our average commercial property value? It's not $385,000.
No, it's not, but for the sake of comparing apples to apples, that same value really needs to be used in order to illustrate what the shift does.
Right, so if you had a commercial value, let's say the average commercial value was twice that amount, then that increase is going to be more like $3,800
That's
bucks a
correct.
year.
That's correct.
Well, it would go from 977 per thousand to 1466. So you
Exactly.
can calculate it based on the value.
For whatever value
Yeah.
that, okay. So, all right, okay, so I understand that. Then the values shown in the upper section of this spreadsheet for commercial, are those property values, the actual property values, or based upon, what is that dollar amount based on?
The category, the column titled value would be the actual value of the commercial class, the industrial class, personal property class, and the residential class. That would be right about in the middle of your page. And then the shift would be to the right-hand side of the page. What that resulting shift does. It shifts the burden to the commercial industrial.
I understand that. No, my question is more basic. Is the $369 million in value for the commercial class, for example, is that the actual property, or is that based
Yes,
upon
that is the property
earnings?
value. That is the property value.
Is that based upon earnings of the business? Is it what valuation?
That all depends on the type of property. There are
That's the
various
total amount that's
types of
taxed.
properties. There are personal property, which is commercial, industrial properties, condominiums, commercial condominiums, restaurants, motels, stores. So there's a large number of ways to value properties. The DOR requires you to value them both in the sales and then by income as well. That are-
Okay.
If they are income-producing properties.
So this $369 million is, so it's a mixed number?
That's correct.
In some cases, it's actual property value, is that correct? Or is
In every case, it's actual property value. The method may be different between properties, but the value in every case is the value of the property.
Okay. Okay, I guess I don't follow that exactly. I'm familiar with valuation methods, but I thought the 369 million, is that the value of the sales?
No, that's the valuation that we have arrived at for all the commercial properties.
Would it be fair to say that's the total number that's actually taxed? So regardless of how you get to.
Commercial
that's
properties,
the number.
yes.
That's the number that's actually taxed
Okay.
on the.
That is correct.
All right, so, okay, that's fine.
Is that commercial figure based on both income and sales? Is there some kind of a blended analysis that goes into arriving at that 369 million?
There is. The Department of Revenue requires, if it's an income-producing property, that you use both a sales or market approach as well as an income approach to value.
So they don't always equal each other. Which one do you choose?
They generally, you need to correlate the two.
Okay,
so
so
they
it is some kind of a blended figure.
Correct.
It's up to you to try to reconcile those two numbers and come up with what you think is fair based on
Exactly.
the income analysis and the market
On the
analysis.
income and expense statements provided based on the cost manuals that are available to you.
Mark?
I don't have any comments. I
Tracy?
support the single rate.
My only question is, every year we look at this and we try to, we have the same thing. We state a factor of 1 because really we have not a healthy enough commercial base to be able to do anything different. So my question really is, as far as trends go, can you talk about the last few years and what you see in the future in terms of the commercial property taxes?
Sure. I think that, as Selectman Holcomb has pointed out, in the last 8 to 10 years, commercial values have been decreasing. The split between residential and commercial has stayed relatively stable, roughly about a 91 to 9% split. The values, obviously in both, were decreasing. As of late, we've seen residential rebound. We've started to see commercial rebound to some degree, but not as robust as the residential market, perhaps.
So this takes into account, you said, the 2020 evaluation. So just for the public, every 3 years, we do a full evaluation of properties, correct?
No, that changed with the Municipal Modernization Act in 2016.
Okay.
The cycle that you're referring to is now 5 years.
Okay.
And we do interim year updates every year in between, the 4 years in between the actual revaluation. You really kind of look at it as once every 4 years, you're sort of looking at the sales and kind of doing a desk audit. And then on that 5th year, Department of Revenue comes in, and you start from scratch again. All of your depreciation tables, your
When did that happen, the 5th year? Is this part of that?
No, that happened last in 2016,
Okay.
the last full revaluation. But we adjust values on a yearly
We're
basis.
still declining. And in new growth, basically, any new building or reinvestments already calculated into this number.
That's correct.
And we're still going in the negative.
So let me come back to that question. With regard to commercial property, is that the same thing, that you make interim adjustments and then do a detailed analysis every 5th year?
That's correct.
Okay, so the fact that we've had a very robust economy in the last 5 years. Is that perhaps indicating that the commercial property could be undervalued as not taking into account all of that growth that may have occurred?
No, we take into account the growth on a yearly basis. The growth is calculated on a yearly basis. Anything that is taxed for the first time is considered growth, and that's done on a yearly basis.
Anything that's taxed for the first time. And what about existing properties?
Same thing. If they put an addition on, if they renovate, that's property that was being taxed for the first time. So that would also.
But if a
come up.
property has done nothing, a commercial property has done nothing,
We then rely on sales as well as the income and expense information that's provided.
that they provide,
They provide, as well as there are cost services that provide you with area income and expenses
okay.
as well.
I guess part of I'm bothered, but what I'm bothered with is that our tax revenues from rooms, meals, automobile excise, but rooms and meals in particular, have gone up substantially in the last 5 years. And I would venture to say are the major reason that we've had significant free cash development in our town during that period of time. Not the exclusive reason, but it's one of the major reasons. And and yet our commercial property values don't seem to have increased during that same time period. And I guess I'm wondering, it seems odd to me that, you know, by virtue of the fact that our tax revenues from those sources are going up dramatically, that's indicative that their sales volumes, gross sales volumes, are increasing dramatically.
But
Yet the valuation is not. And I guess I don't know how to square that.
Well, wouldn't when you do the analysis, you said you look at income and expenses, right? So I'm assuming, from what Norm said, that if you get an increase in those revenues and you're not getting an increase in valuation, then you're probably getting an increase in expenses that equals or exceeds those increases.
That is a potential, yes.
I just want to add, based on the revenue trend reports you all receive on a monthly basis, that the rooms tax is at 98.64% of where we were last year, so less. And the meals tax is at 102% of where we were last year. And I think, Selectman Holcomb, you asked some questions about, the peer-to-peer comparison between Yarmouth and Dennis. Just hot off the presses from the DOR from this Friday. As an example, Dennis has 52 eating and drinking places, and their meals tax is $602,031. We have 70 eating establishments, and our meals tax is $641,161. So on a per establishment basis, we're underperforming Dennis and various other locations. And I think, as you saw in the UMass study, there are different things that you can point to, but some of them are the infrastructure challenges that we have for people to renovate and improve their buildings.
But Ed, what has happened with tax revenues, town tax revenues, from rooms and meals taxes in the last 5 years?
I have the numbers here. Do you want me to print that out and give it to you?
Well, just give us some round number indications of what they were 5 years ago and what they are now.
Let's take 2016. The rooms tax was $2,878,451. And right now, they're $2,845,651.
Okay.
Meals tax, a little bit better performer, $584,203, and right now we're at $641,161.
That's from 2016 to
2016 to 2019, fiscal year end.
Okay, that's 3 years. Okay. All right, so you're saying basically the rooms are flat,
That's correct.
okay, in that period of time. Okay.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
but there is an uptick in meals except for And there's a 2% uptick this fiscal year as well.
But the numbers, I mean, certainly the rooms tax is the more substantial portion.
Absolutely.
It's, you know, okay. Okay.
Mark?
Ed, before you go away, don't go away.
Yes, sir.
Could you provide an update on excise tax?
Yes, we're at 96.47%
Really?
of where we were last year. That had been robust. $3,318,783 in 2016. We're currently at $3,759,280.
That's good. Thank you.
I move that the town of Yarmouth continue to tax all classes at the same rate by adopting a factor of 1 and to reduce the residential exemption and the small commercial exemption.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt a factor of 1. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So that
I
passes
further move
unanimously.
to authorize use of signature stamp for tax rate forms and to authorize the Director of Finance to sign for the Board of Selectmen electronically.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second on the execution of the documents. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That passes unanimously as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very
I have these papers for you to sign, and just to let you know that next year, I will probably be here with a laptop, because the next year, the DOR is going to basically make each and every one of you sign on to Gateway and sign off on it yourselves. They won't accept the
Electronic
in lieu
by
of any
somebody else.
longer, starting next year.
Okay.
Andy, while I have the opportunity, I want to thank you for all your work with the elderly and disabled tax abatement programs that we have. I know you've put a lot of effort into that over the past years, and it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Just a quick update. We've had 5 workshops to date for the senior exemption. We have our 6th workshop tomorrow. Been attended by probably 35 to 40 people. They come in, watch a presentation, and then get individual help. And that doesn't include the people that are going to the senior center and getting individual help over there as well, and shut-ins as well. So that's going to them as well.
It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is it? Just this one sheet? Oh, okay, so there are 2. Here you go.
Mike, can you sign that?
Okay. Next item is the golf fiscal year 2019 wrap-up.
Pat, you look like you just got off the course.
It did kind of, couldn't get the hair done, so we...
You look like, no, you fit right in for golf. This is perfect. Gotcha.
Good evening. I am Scott Gilmore, and Pat Armstrong is with me. We're excited to give you our fiscal wrap-up of golf. We've worked very hard this year to do everything we can to exceed your expectation and ours and turn things around for golf. I prepared, with Pat's help, a quick little slideshow of where we're at. And once that gets loaded up, we can move forward a little bit. It's literally the only thing on there. There we go.
Actually works.
Yeah. Okay, so this first slide is a slide that was prepared, I believe, back in February when we came through a plan on the turnaround of 2019 of projections we were trying to hit to not use some of the town funding. And as you can see, we're trying to hit 4 to 5, 6% of increases across the board, which represented 137,500. That was part of the plan to help turn golf around. I guess this doesn't work.
It does. It's okay. Not in? Sorry. Go ahead. I'm getting good at this data stuff.
Like to buy a vowel?
All right, so here's what we did in FY19 over FY18 for both Bayberry Hills and Bass River. I separated out both to show you the growth in pretty much every category that we had. As you can see, we're up 25% in greens fees at Bayberry, 20% in cart fee, 12% range, 8% merchandise, and 43% up in the restaurant.
Can I just ask a question about
Yep.
that, Scott? Is this just income, or is this?
This is purely revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. On the other side, what that's saying is everybody is pretty excited about the renovation, everything we did at Bayberry. On the other side, we have Bass River, 2% in green and cart fee, 5% in merchandise, slight dip in the restaurant, 8% in the non-resident annual, which is still pretty good because we actually lowered that on the payment plan because we did the one fee and not have a different fee for it. So that was a pretty good increase there. And overall membership was up 5% and roughly $38,000. Add them all together and we did roughly $365,000 over FY18. The next slide here is what we did against our projected budget. So revenues for FY19 finished at $3,645,329.11. As I said, that was 365 up over FY18. Bass River finished at 49,167, 2.5% above projections. Bayberry finished at 229,992, 17% above projections. Total of 279,160, 8% over FY19 budget. I prepared this before final numbers were done, so my early estimate was roughly 85,000 being used from town meeting money. In reality, it was 81,763 needed to use to make the ends meet there. The final slide that we prepared is the expenses. So we spent, again, this is right before the final numbers came out, was $3,720,894. That was pretty much our budgeted number. That it's above about 4.5% over FY18, which is $3,552,453. This increase was due to a combination of things. We saw a pretty greater revenue stream, which in turn we had to spend more money on food, pro shot items, beverages to keep everything in stock, to keep selling items. As well, on the other side, we had a pretty significant increase in maintenance supplies because we were closed for roughly 2 years on 9 holes, so we had savings then on the need for chemical and fertilizer, but being fully operational again, we had to uptick the amount of money we spent to keep the course in good shape. That's pretty much the wrap up we have prepared for you tonight.
What's the bottom line, Scott? You separated them. The income and expenses. What's the net result?
Well, the net result was ending on 81,763, 31 cents being used from the 364.
Okay.
364,000 from town meetings, so that we were able to save 282,276 and 69 cents of the allotted money that was voted in for us.
So that's another way of saying that we lost 81,000 compared to an original projection of 364,000.
Correct.
So we did roughly $280,000 better than what we originally projected.
Correct.
Okay. How does that look for the future?
Well, actually, it's a good question because right after the fiscal end in July 1 through July 8th there, we were actually the busiest we have ever been and shattered records at both courses during that week. July 5th, we put out 487 players at Bayberry and 300 at Bass River. Both shattered records that day. So, I mean, it started from July 1 all the way through July 8th, and it's continuing now. So people are very excited about both courses, coming out, enjoying it. Like I said, we get nothing but compliments of the Bayberry and the renovation that we went through, and everybody keeps saying, we're going to be back, we're going to be back. So.
Anyone on the board?
I have some
Tracy?
questions. I guess just the overall picture going forward. We still have, this is good. We still need to work to not have any deficit. I know there were some things in the works in terms of software. Where are we at with that? Do you think that that will help us in terms of the bottom line, or?
Yeah, it's definitely going to help us. We haven't done anything yet because we're in the middle of the season. It'd be very difficult to pull a trigger on anything right now, so we're in hold pattern until October, November, when we reassess the need, and then hopefully institute it then when we have the whole winter to get it up and running for next year.
So it'll be another season before we see. But do you think that will make a difference in terms of the revenue generation?
Absolutely, because the system, well, the two systems that we utilize don't really work well together. We're looking for an all-in-one system where we can utilize the more modern technology that can email market, social media, as well as a new website, everything that we lack now. So if you were to come play, we would actually have no idea that you played except for that day. So we have no way of actually tracking you that you played and send you an email right now based on our system. But all the brand new POS systems have that capability.
It would probably be good if nobody knew I played.
The people around you would probably know you played.
We'll pretend I was never there. Okay, thank you.
Norm?
I'm not sure, we didn't ask you to come prepared to discuss all the operational plans for the next year, but I know there was a request for proposal that had gone out, and I'm not sure where that stands in terms of support, organizational support for Scott, and I think the board is interested in how that stands, of course.
They're presently, we did do a request for proposal, and it was evaluated, and we selected the National Golf Foundation to come in and do an appraisal of our present operation and utilizing what Mr. Keegan had done, and then to create a 5-year business plan, a strategic business plan that would help get our reserves back in a healthy place within the next 5 years. And that's an all-encompassing plan that would start with time it takes to mow and how many staff we have, and if we have the right patterns of staffing, the right patterns of use, how we are utilizing the systems in-house, what standard operating procedures need to be changed in order to better utilize our systems. So it'll be comprehensive, and they'll be here the last week of July, beginning of August, so that 29th of July through August 2nd or 3rd. And once again, meeting with people, but more importantly, seeing things like point of sale and communication systems that aren't in place, so that would, and recommend how we might change that and affordability based on what we have. We also have a position open, available at the moment, a full-time position that we would like to, and the Personnel Board and Mr. Knappich and Scott and I have decided it's going to be a manager for marketing and business. So that person will come in with business skills in support of Scott and some of the business operations, the training of the staff, that business acumen, so he can be more out working in the specifics with the community and on the courses, and also do someone that's very well familiar with social media and marketing and being nimble in our ability to reach to not only our members but our Greens fee-paying customers. So that's a grade 8 operations assistant, such as Mrs. White and Mr. MacArthur is now. And then that's the position that was left by Mr. Guido in his retirement not long ago. So that's out on the street now, and we're looking for that and hope to have that person familiar with our business when this business plan comes through. We've also asked the National Golf Foundation to wrap up their work, hopefully before our town meeting. So our October town meeting, so that we have an answer of where we are going if there's something pertinent to this that would happen at town meeting. So we have some work to do on that. There might be some wastewater crossover with golf that we need to talk about, and we want to kind of see where we're at with that. And then thirdly, we'll be looking at staffing and from the recommendations where we go forward from the National Golf Foundation study. So a marketing plan and a strategic business plan.
Okay.
I forgot the marketing plan, my apologies. There to do that as well.
Okay. I think that, it covers a lot of the things that we had talked about as weaknesses, our organizational weaknesses and so forth, and marketing weaknesses, and hopefully, with the organization's additional staff person, we'll be able to address those, I continue to hear, as I'm out playing, positives and about the course conditions, the the negative side of it has been, gee, we can't get any tea times, but that's a bad, that's a good problem to
Good and
have.
bad at the same time.
And I guess the other comment that I've heard is, things are really beautiful. Don't screw it up. Don't try to do too many things that will endanger what we've already accomplished, and so people are saying, look, keep at it, and I think the second comment that I've heard is, keep talking to the members, keep trying to help them enjoy the courses in as many ways as possible, and pay attention to their suggestions. So.
Absolutely.
So I think I think we're getting good positive feedback at this point. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Just so that I'm clear, the deficit that we're running just for FY19 is what, did you say 81,000?
Correct. Yeah.
And what were we projecting?
300
and some odd. So we're doing much better than we had thought. One of the items that I'm having trouble understanding on the slideshow here is the reference that we're putting a $350,000 placeholder for free cash FY19.
That was the presentation from February, so we brought it back to you to show you what we thought we could do, and we were being aggressive, and we actually blew it out of the water.
Okay, so we don't need
that
to even...
placeholder was already done. It was voted in, the 364, and we only used 81,000.
So it was just a carryover from a prior presentation, so we should just ignore it. Okay, that's great. When you look back over this past FY19, Scott, any major lessons learned that can almost immediately be applied to the next budget round and looking ahead?
Yeah, I mean, we have, like I said before, we have issues down, well, not issues, but we just have old equipment that we spend a lot of money maintaining. If you look at the numbers, we've almost spent $500,000 over the last 4 years just maintaining our equipment. So January 1, we're actually up on a bunch of payments and leases that we can then reinvest into the golf course and bring in new equipment, which will in turn save us a lot of money on the maintenance end, and we can just focus on preventative maintenance rather than big time fixes. The other day, one mower had the controller go and then the alternator go. That's $3,000 in one machine in 3 hours. We're not going the right direction in that way. So it's good to know January 1 we're moving in the right direction, where we have money available to combat the more problems and save some money on the expenses and put out better course conditions at the same time.
Yeah, I noticed also at I think it's Bayberry, this huge increase in revenue at the Bayberry Hills restaurant.
Correct. Yeah.
What's going on there? What do you? Is it the new chef? Is it what?
Well, we pretty much redid the entire grill team at both locations. I think what you see at Bayberry is just people are excited about the course. I've always said that when the course is good, people are going to go in and have a beer or have a cheeseburger. We have to put out the product. As long as people are happy playing golf on the golf course, they're going to spend money in the pro shop, money in the grill.
Yeah,
and that's how it all works.
That's a significant improvement. Yeah. No, thank you again for the update. This is helpful. I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. On the RFP for the 5-year plan, Ed Centeo pointed out previously that as part of the golf budget, we're only paying interest on the monies that we use to renovate the golf courses, and that at some point in time there's got to be a repayment of that out of capital. Is that plan going to address that as well?
It will, and those numbers are, we actually discussed those this morning as we were getting ready for this presentation, but we're very aware of that, and what we're hoping that we can do is pay back over time. Now, we want to be able to put and repopulate that reserve fund so that it can help with paying for future improvements that are on the calendar. So we don't want to have to take all our revenues for the next 3 years to pay off that loan. So we'll need to negotiate with this hard negotiation team on a payment plan back, be it over 5 or 10 years, so that, because what's the number, Scott, that we owe besides the staffing for the renovation that we talked about this morning?
Oh, I think that's 485 to
485.
I think he's talking about the Bayberry renovation, correct?
I thought you were talking about all the.
That money is built into our operating budget and debt service, so we
But I
we
think
pay
that
for
debt
that.
service is just interest, isn't it, Ed?
No, it's principal and interest in our debt.
No, we did a one-year interest. We just signed a
No, I
one-year
think that's interest only. Ed Centeo can address that. And Ed, what's the principal balance on that?
$1,950,000.
A couple million, right? Roughly, rough numbers?
Yeah. We had to pay a small amount of principal this year. We have to pay a small amount of principal next year, which is in the budget, but nowhere near the principal payment that we have to accrue. However, once we have the existing debt drops off to zero, then we can slide this debt payment into the operating budget and be more aggressive at paying principal.
What year is that going to drop off? 2 years from now?
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're poised to be able to handle that.
Yeah, and that was why we had not long-term borrowed, because we didn't want to put too much of a burden on the operating expenses for the golf course. And also, just a minor note of correction, the reason why we needed to have that free cash amount at $300,000 is because the expenses went up that much, and the DOR was not going to pass our tax rate unless we showed some revenue from that side, and they could not look at the history or the historical record of the golf course in order to say, well, we'll take your word for it that you're going to make this much money. So that's why we had to put up that amount of money in order to move forward. And just like this year, we're going to have to put up $149,000 in reserves in order to accommodate the additional expenditures that the golf department wants.
Wait, we have reserves left? I thought we didn't have reserves left.
So we have reserves left because we subsidized. So we put in last year $130,000. We had $149,000 in reserves as a result. This year we'll have reserves as it relates to what they did not spend from what the general fund provided.
Right.
But that supplies a cushion for the golf department moving forward.
A couple questions on the repayment of that debt, Ed. What do you, once the principal schedule starts, what do you anticipate for a term for repayment of that loan?
Well, we have a few ways to go depending on where the interest rates are and what other borrowing we're doing. Because if we just borrowed for, the other point was, if we just borrowed for $1.9 million, the expenses to borrow would be, oversized versus that amount of money. So depending on what else we borrow, and then where we are at that point in time, we could just decide to pay principal on a voluntary basis, keep on going with the short-term note, and just pay it off at the end of our ability to keep on rolling over short-term notes. So we need to just kind of see where we are, and I think we talked about it this year. We need to start looking at what you want to do with the budget in FY21 as it relates to the debt for golf, if you want to do anything. That was part of the discussion when we actually had you all sign the short-term note, that the time to discuss it is in August, September, October, because at the point when we were looking for your signatures, it was pretty much a done deal. So that discussion should be had as we're actually doing the budget for FY21 for the golf department.
Now, once that drop-off occurs, do you anticipate that can be handled out of golf revenues, assuming they continue to increase in a positive way without unduly burdening the operational budget of golf?
They'll have to kind of pick it up by at least $81,000 in order to handle that. Yes. So if that can happen, then yes, they would be able to absorb that debt.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your coming in. Next item is the roadway banner project.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Kyle Pedicini. I'm the town's economic development coordinator. I'm here to present the roadway banner project that we're trying to implement in town. Just to give you some background on the project, there was a vote at the 2017 town meeting that amended the zoning bylaw to allow for the installation of town-owned roadway banners on utility and light poles in the public's right-of-way, in accordance with policies and procedures adopted by the Board of Selectmen. So the Community and Economic Development Committee has expanded on the work originally done by the Planning Board and have developed the attached roadway banner sign policy, which we're looking for your approval on tonight. The policy has been reviewed by Town Council. So the Community and Economic Development Committee has discussed funding the banner installation at 2 different locations in town, and the map is attached, the locations that have been discussed. The project would be funded through the Tourism Revenue Preservation Fund, but based on cost estimates that were received, the committee agreed to revisit the topic in the fall in hopes of securing better pricing then. So basically what we're looking for tonight from you is approval on our policy and authorization for the town administrator to sign the banner attachment license that's in your packet with Eversource, so that when funding does become available, we can implement the project in an expeditious manner. And in your packet, you can see we have the policy. We have a sample of an application, which would be presented to you for your approval of the banners. And an example of a mock-up of kind of the banners we're talking about. The design hasn't been finalized, so it's likely to change. But yeah, that would be my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Scott?
I have questions.
Go ahead,
This is
Tracy.
Kyle. So this is what you're proposing?
Yeah, like I said, the designs haven't been finalized, so the Chamber of Commerce actually obtained those original mock-ups, so we would probably do something. We're not sure exactly what they're going to look like.
Can you tell me the process, though, when it is final? Does it get approved by this board?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it'd be an application with exactly what it's going to look like.
So I guess with the application that I saw, group or affiliation could be anybody, not necessarily the town of Yarmouth. I guess I have two things. I just want to make sure that.
If I may just quickly, it would only be the town of Yarmouth. There were First Amendment issues with this
Yeah.
item, so that's why we were only allowing the town of Yarmouth to make the applications.
Okay. I think we need to clarify that.
So we did check with town council on that issue, and the zoning bylaw amendment in 2017, it specifically states they're town-owned roadway banners, so they must be town-owned in order to be permitted.
So, okay, all right. So that leaves out my next question in terms of fees. I guess the only other concern, based on some of the experiences that I've seen with some other communities, is here where it says removal, the applicant is responsible. I mean, they keep saying the applicant, but it's really the town.
Right.
Is responsible for the move of banners, rods, brackets at the end of the allowed duration. So where is it that it puts the duration? I guess one of the things that happened in one of the other communities where something got put up that offended somebody.
That's why we went this route.
But in this, I think that we should add to this that not at the end of the duration or due to poor maintenance. I think it should also be allowed by a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, it does.
It says in duration under 3, duration for which roadway banners may be displayed is at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen, so there's
Talk
great.
about the removal, though. The end of the removal?
Well, what number? Oh, 7?
Yeah.
Says the applicant is responsible for the removal of all banners, rods, and brackets at the end of the allowed duration, and again, that would be determined by the Board of Selectmen, or if directed by the town due to poor maintenance or condition or due to adverse weather conditions. Rods and brackets may remain if additional use is anticipated within 4 weeks. So if the town orders them to take them down for reasons of
other
poor
than that,
maintenance.
that's all I'm saying, is we should
adverse
add to that it should be, removal could be just by the majority of the Board of Selectmen.
Well, I think you got to read 3 and 7 together, because
Oh,
under
not
3,
for, but still with,
under 3, the duration is up to the Board of Selectmen, so the Board of Selectmen can say, you know.
say they're up. Say we've authorized it for a 3-year period of time, 2-year period of time,
Okay.
whatever it is, and something happens where the public is upset about it. The way this is, we can't ask them to remove it. The removal,
I think number
I
3
mean,
addresses
we're
that.
talking about town-owned banners.
Yeah.
I think what's getting confusing here is a little bit of the wording implies that it's
Applicant,
somewhat
yeah.
other than the town, and when in fact, this all applies just to town banners.
Correct, yeah, correct,
Yeah.
in this instance.
And so it's like, well, okay, we have a problem with the banners, take them down. I mean, you know, that's our call, and it's going to be our staff doing the work.
well, not according to why, reasons for removal, so.
So if it's just
I'm just
town-owned
saying-
banners, I guess, who's the applicant going to be? Can you give me an example?
It would,
DC.
CEDC, yep, Community and Economic Development Committee.
Okay,
The department, right,
all right, so it's a department.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're right there, Norm. I mean, we can direct the department to take it down at any time, really. As long as there's no outside groups that, if you allowed outside groups to do it, I think Tracy has a point there, we'd have to modify paragraph 7, but,
I think we should modify it anyway. What's the harm in saying a majority of the Board of Selectmen could ask for removal? I think it's clear, but
I mean, I don't have a problem either way, really, with that.
I'm glad we're moving forward with this. I appreciate it. I think, so from this, you're starting at the corner of 28 and Higgins Scroll. You're going to start there and at Four Corners down in South Yarmouth.
You got it, yep.
So this came faster than our Gateway project from 10 years ago, so that's great. And I like the look of the banner. I like the towns that have them. I think that if maintained properly and has a good design to it, I think that they look very nice. So I appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Norm?
I don't have any other comments at
Mark?
this point.
I'm sorry I missed your presentation. I stepped out for like 5 minutes and then you were over. It's the fastest
Sorry.
presentation, I think, on record here. I wish we had others that were that quick.
Well, I do your minutes, so I'm,
Yeah.
sensitive to how long presentations go.
When are these going up? What's the game
Well,
plan?
so we still have to deal with the funding issue.
Okay,
So probably the earliest would be the fall.
got it.
So, Mr. Chairman, Kyle, you're looking for 2 motions, right?
Yes, for a vote on approval of the policy and to authorize the town administrator to sign the banner attachment license with Eversource.
Make a motion, we approve the roadway banner sign policy with the amendment to our number 7 removal that says the applicant is responsible for the removal of all banners, rods, brackets at the end of the allowed duration, or if directed by the town due to poor maintenance, condition due to adverse weather conditions, or a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen, rods and brackets may remain. Additional use is anticipated within 4 weeks.
I'll second that.
All right, give me 1 second. So Tracy, your amendment would be after the words adverse weather conditions in the 3rd line to add or a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen, period, right?
Correct, yes.
That's your amendment. And you second that, Norm?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so moving that as amended, all those in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I also make a motion to authorize the town administrator on behalf of the board to sign the banner attachment license.
We have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So they'll both pass unanimously. Thank you very much for your presentation and your quick action on this.
Thank you.
Okay.
We caught right back up.
Let's hope Mr. Dwelly can be as quick with
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
next
Let's
section.
do it.
Watch this.
Thank you for racing back from Dover to be with us tonight.
My pleasure, Mr. Forrest.
What?
Glad to be here. Before you, and in your packet, is a revised and proposed Town of Yarmouth Board Committee and Commission's Handbook. We had initially discussed this about a year ago. The idea was, let's consolidate our 6 or 7 existing committee and board policies that are on record into one document, as well as provide a resource for our volunteers in town that they can have to help guide them through what their responsibilities are being on a board or committee, as well as some other additional important information here about what it's like to serve on a committee in the town of Yarmouth. So that is what's in front of you here today. Over the past year, we've gone and solicited feedback from you, the board, from committee members, from staff members, legal counsel, and worked closely with Selectman Forrest in his role as appointments chair on getting this in place. So if the board is prepared to, well, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, and if the board is ready, they can certainly take a vote to have this replace your existing committee policies and have this be the record.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just provide some additional background?
Sure.
You know, since I've taken on the assignment of handling the chair of appointments, this has certainly been important to me, because right now we have a multitude of policies, and some of them aren't necessarily all consistent. So to have one document, sort of a one-stop shopping, so to speak, one policy that incorporates bits and pieces of everything is incredibly important. And I've spent a fair amount of time with Chris on this. I appreciate, Chris, all the work that you've done to help pull this together. There are some other things that Chris has been working on as well that are worth noting, and that is Chris has also been investigating software with county officials and others to help us do a better job of keeping track of appointments and committees. One of the biggest challenges, you know, for whoever takes this position in the future is going to be keeping track of committees, their terms, when appointments expire, when they need to get reappointed. It's a far from perfect system, but Chris has been working on some ideas and recommendations that will take us a long way forward. So I appreciate all the work and effort that you've been doing on that as well. From a staff point of view, it can be challenging for staff in the town administrator's office to stay on top of all of this. So hopefully by computerizing some of the information and taking advantages of software improvements, I think we can take the whole operation of this part of our job, we can take it to a whole new level. So once again, Chris, thanks for doing that. With respect to, I'd be happy as well as Chris to also respond to any comments that board members may have about any of the other provisions, what was left in, what was taken out, if you have any. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Norm, do you have any comments or
No.
questions?
It's a beefy document.
It certainly is.
Tracy?
I have a lot. I appreciate the work that's went into this. It's a lot of hard work. The problem always is there's so many laws and things that are referenced in here that are forever changing, that it makes it very difficult to keep up with. What I'm concerned about with the process of this replacing other items, for instance, I was on the subcommittee that worked to get the article passed on the removal bylaw. Now, that was passed by town meeting. So do we have the authority to displace that with something different? I guess that's just a question of process. Because,
If you have a particular, I would recommend that if
but the
there's...
removal policy,
Right, I
that's
think
part of our-
then we probably need to address that individually. A document like this cannot do away with the bylaw. I mean, that's just my understanding of how, I mean, I'll
I'm not
defer
sure
to
it's
council on that.
consistent with it, so.
But if it's not consistent with it, we should flag it and then review it to make sure that the document is. That was one of the reasons why we had town council take a look at it, to help us identify areas where there may be inconsistencies with bylaws. And he did provide a fair amount of comments. But listen, this needs to be done right. So if there's something that we may have missed, we need to grab that and flag it.
Just because there was such a resistance to it, and knowing that it had been through town meeting, I think that it's something that we need to look at in terms of, you know,
Right.
making sure they're consistent, and whether or not it needs to be referenced in here, or if we can get rid of it.
Let me just,
I don't know, the pages aren't numbered, but it's where it says vacancies, resignations, and lack of attendance.
How many pages in are you?
Hold on.
so what we need to do is, what you're suggesting, Tracy, is to take a look at the removal policy
Yeah.
and to make sure that that's
just,
reflected in.
I only got that far before
No.
I got to that, and it kind of struck me, and then
I thought we passed a bylaw on removal.
we did.
That's what Tracy is pointing out, is that we should take a look at that bylaw just to make sure that the bylaw is consistent with what we have in here. Again, we did not come to this meeting tonight thinking that this was going to be a fait accompli. What we're doing is we're looking for comment, we're looking for
Yeah.
feedback. So I think
No,
now's
I
the
think it's
time.
very comprehensive, but almost to the point where it's so comprehensive, and like I said at the beginning, there's so many laws that are referenced in here that are forever changing, that it's gonna take work to keep up with it.
I understand. I do think we did capture most of things. I think this is a document that I would say is, it's not perfect, but I don't think there are many things we missed. Let's put it that way.
If I may, just real quick, some of the feedback I get from folks that are been somewhat maybe asked or through our network to come on board, they'd like to simply know what's involved. How does this happen? What's the process? What will I be responsible for? And I think a precursory review of the document, though it is a bit beefy to use Mr. Holcomb's word, because I agree, I think on a lot of fronts for those folks, and you know many of them take these, they all take these duties that we've bestowed upon them very seriously. This will cover, to the extent that any document can, a lot of that, those unanswered questions. And then further, they get further questions when they go to the appointments chair. Sometimes they come to my office and ask further questions about process. But like any policy or document that we put forward, I think it's incumbent upon us to have a system in place that when it gets reviewed on some regular routine basis, to do that checking on an MGL that might have changed or been revisited or whatnot. So this is a starting point. We do, in my short time here in town, we've had some interactions that have come to my attention that have been less than productive with some members, and I think a document like this just puts everybody on the same plane of expectation. And what's interesting in today's day and age that we're in, I think it's our due diligence to our own volunteers to make sure they can fully appreciate what service on a board or committee means in because it's like an employment scenario they're in today, and we have to be very mindful of that environment. So it's a great starting point. I want to thank Chris for all the work and the team that went into it, and certainly Mark. It's one of those thankless tasks that have to be addressed, and I think we would like to get feedback from you, incorporate it quickly, get something commissioned so we can start posting it and handing it out. And then with the commitment to you that we'll revisit it on a regular basis. As it needs to be amended, it'll get so amended.
Well, I think, too, that this solidifies the process. I know you were criticized recently for not including somebody in your thing. This basically says you have to do it with the chairman. You have to use the form. There's been times in the past that it's been the appointments chair's recommendation to this board.
Right.
Regardless of who comes out on top. If they think that a certain person is better for the position, this kind of says you have to use that form.
Yeah, the whole thing, what this does is it makes it far more transparent. If you post this and make it available to anybody, then people can see what the guidelines are. When I interview applicants, for example, I put some of the policy information that we've adopted as a board in front of the applicants to make sure they understand, you know, what it is we're supposed to be looking for when we interview applicants for certain positions or certain committees. But like I said, I think your point, Tracy, about the bylaw, the removal bylaw, we can check on that. And if there are any other, I would argue if there are any other comments, please send them to Chris. And we can come back at you with an updated, revised version, and then get the board's approval when you're ready to sign off on it. But I've been desperate for this because I want people who are interested in serving in the town, since I'm always talking up serving on a committee, at least in my travels in the community, that they can get something on the website that's very easy to read, that's in English. It's one document that sort of clearly explains when you become a committee member what's expected of you, what the process is, and what the town's guidelines are. So
I just want to make a couple comments. First of all, I think this is going to be very important for the functioning of committees, because the chair of committees really doesn't have much guidance at all, and people say, well, you conduct a meeting by Robert Rules of Order, but who knows what that's, who has a copy of that, and who knows what it means. So there is very little, if any, guidance as to, you know, committees get along remarkably well. I mean, there's a problem here and there, but it's nice to have a document to go there to resolve conflicts or issues or potential problems and see what the code of conduct should be in particular situations. So that's a good thing. I like the fact that all these various committees and the source of authority for these committees is appended to the handbook, so that, you know, there's a quick reference to the governing documents that may come into play. I think that saves an awful lot of time, and I think many chairs of committees wouldn't know where to look for that kind of information. So it's a quick index and at your fingers type of resource. So I think that's really good too. To answer Tracy's question, I think, not to answer her question, but to comment on her point. Yes, that's a problem, Tracy, to make sure that this document that cites any type of legal authority is consistent with other bylaws or statutes or whatever. But no matter what kind of a job we do on that, no matter how good it is, laws are going to change constantly. That's what legislators do. They just manufacture laws day in and day out. And, you know, as lawyers, we get all these resources that constantly update us on various legislative actions. And if you look at the general laws now, you'll find a lot of the stuff is inconsistent and out of date, and every now and then the legislature, some subcommittee will catch on to that, and they'll revise them and revamp them. But there's all kinds of obsolete laws that are still kind of hanging around that nobody enforces and nobody deals with. They just have to be cleaned up. So we won't be exempt from that, no matter how good of a project this turns out to be. I give another example of our rules and regulations on liquor. I think we've amended them once or twice. Not huge amendments, but things that we saw slip through the cracks in the course of our hearings, or there may be a few changes or a couple of significant cases come down. Not a big deal. We just bring an amendment in, a new version, and adopt it, you know, so I anticipate this as being a fluid document, no matter what the end product is, that will be amended from time to time to keep up. But your point is very well taken about we need to have consistency with our own bylaws and with the applicable statutes. And Chris, thank you very much for your efforts.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. So we'll put this on an agenda again after Mark has an opportunity to look at the point Tracy made and any other comments board members have, you can directly send them to Chris. It might be good if we copy whatever our amendments are to the rest of the board members, just to keep them informed as to what's going on in terms of additional input, if that's okay with everyone. All right?
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Next one is a favorite of board's goals review, and we're not going to have the Invisio on the screen, are we? Or are we?
I wasn't planning on
Okay.
bringing it up. I'm happy to
No.
if that's the board's preference.
Unless anybody wants that. Now, Eric isn't here, and typically when we adopt goals, we do that when everyone's in attendance. We can do one of two things. We can put it off, or we can just start it and start the discussion and the review and continue it, going forward. I asked for the board's input on that. How you'd like to handle that?
Well, I mean, some of these things can stay, most of them can stay. Like, a lot of them are, shared dispatch has nothing next to it, so.
We've had some staffing and personnel challenges of great significance this year, but it is on the list as soon as we get fully up to speed, we'll get on that.
So what's actually the title of Goal 1? It starts with the focus area, but what is that, Goal 2 is high-quality infrastructure. What is the title of Goal 1? Just for my own.
Was it
Well, it's
economic
interesting. That
development?
should be,
I think it's
yeah, it looks to
economic
be
development.
cut off. It is, Goal 1 is expand economic development.
Okay. I think one of the things that needs to be added, and it's the same mantra I always have, but communication. Internal communication amongst staff and amongst the board. I think it needs to be a goal. I think Mark has...
Well, it's again on my list.
Yeah, well, you're really honed in onto the communication in terms of our discussions and information getting to the public, but, we still have, I think we could be sharing information internally better in terms of, like, even just the calendar. The calendar, we still can't, we can't get the calendar right. I'd like to know that a meeting starts at 5 and not 6:30. And we put it there months in advance, which is great, but when it changes, it doesn't get updated, and I go by my phone, unfortunately, so.
Could I make a comment? I mean, one of the things that Chris is working on, and I've had a bit of, this has been on the subject of communications, one of the things I've been harping on, is finding ways to better utilize the website, make it clearer, make the calendar more prominent, and make some of the news items to make it as much of a resource for the community, but also for town department heads and town employees. And I don't want to steal any thunder, but Chris has been working on a number of improvements that I think will dramatically enhance the ability of the website to do some of the things that we've been talking about. So I'll leave that for a later date when you're prepared to brief the board on some of the things that you're working on. But that continues to be a priority. The other item would be, which we do need to talk about because we're in the midst of the Comcast discussions, relates to how can we improve our Channel 18? How can we get better programming on? How can we more fully utilize our own TV channel to provide information to the voters, the taxpayers, others in the community that are trying to follow what we're doing? I will admit the use of YouTube is a big step forward. I think I don't want to suggest that nothing's being done. A lot's being done, and that's one of the areas that we need to strategize on and figure out how we're going to tackle it. There are other towns that are much further ahead of us in terms of utilizing the TV communications platform. There are other towns that are using their communications or the Comcast dollars to actually underwrite staff. Dennis has 3 people that are town employees that work on their TV station, their website, and their communications platforms. Chatham, I can go literally down the list. Increasingly, communities are either dedicating staff or personnel or resources. I know for us the challenge is where does it fit within our overall budgetary framework, because we've had our own fiscal challenges to address and wrestle with, but I do believe as a board we should continue to nudge and push and encourage and prioritize the communications infrastructure as we've talked about in the past. But I do have to acknowledge that the town administrator's office has consistently been exploring and looking and working in this area. I just happen to, I may demonstrate a lack of patience at times, but there is a fair amount of work going on there. I'd like to think that maybe we can set some benchmarks in terms of certain deliverables soon.
100%.
I don't know.
It's the last
page.
The last page of the goal is expand and enhance community programming.
That's that's like community programs, not communication programming.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well.
We do have a few goals
What's
related
that?
to sharing.
Oh.
There you go.
I don't see the splash pad on here either. I'd like to have a splash pad if I hadn't mentioned it already.
So, well, one of the things, this is a part of the discussion that we wanted to have as we went through this tonight, is what would be really helpful is between now and the next meeting, if the board members could think about specifically what would be the focus items that in the next upcoming year you would really like to see get some movement on, and that helps us direct it. I mean, we get hit. Sometimes we feel like we're fielding baseballs all day long, and we've had some significant balls hit at high velocity at us this year that sometimes sidetrack some of our mission. But we still try to keep some of the core items going, like the 6A project and Center Street. Next meeting out, we'll have some update and some motions for you on the speed situation going on over there. But specifically, and I know that's been a point.
Well, I guess it's a quality of life. Maybe that needs to be a thing. But, I think about 20 years for the dog park and how people enjoy that. It's very, very rare that we do a lot of work here. A lot of it's very non-tangible. A lot of it is keeping really just the ball going forward, and it's not really making it. That is something that we could do without increasing tax dollars. That would really change the quality of life for some people and enjoy the community. So that's why I harp on it, because other communities have done it with CPA funds.
Mr. Colby's here. I think he's taking a note. I saw him actively taking a note.
Yeah.
Splash pad. But that's helpful for us to drive.
That's me, but
no,
for me, I think
I agree, Tracy. I think projects like that are very important for the department heads and the administrator to know some of the individual projects that the board sees as a very high priority. In that vein, I think one of the things that I noticed in sort of the free cash allocation yet to be addressed was a provision for a visioning initiative involving the Community Development Office, the Planning Office. I think that can actually be, assuming this can be done and move forward, I think visioning can also, if it's done, and I'm assuming the plan is to do it as a community-based, getting the community involved and having visioning done in a way that reflects how the people of Yarmouth see Yarmouth growing and developing the kind of community that they want to see us become. I think if we get to the point within a year, if we can have a vision statement that is reflective of a consensus within Yarmouth in terms of their goals, where they see the future of this community going, that I'd like to see that document also become an integral part of our goal setting, that our goal setting as a board can mesh with the community's vision, so when we're actually constructing this document each year when we go through it, we can really ask ourselves, how far have we gone in actually achieving the things that the people of Yarmouth want us to achieve? So to me, what's missing in this, and again, another work in progress, but what's missing in this document, in this process, is our ability to get further along in a visioning process, which can inform us, and it can inform our whole goal-setting structure. So I'm anxious to see that process unfold, and that's what I would like to see happen once we complete it. It should also help us with our master planning, our LCP, now that the Cape Cod Commission has done their guidelines. We can get that stuff further along. There are a whole range of things that can happen. But I think goal setting involving the community is incredibly important. So I hope in the future we'll be able to figure out a way to launch that soon and get that process unfolding, because I think it'll be a huge help for us as a board.
Well, the other thing on here, too, is high-quality education, which I think should stay as a goal, but a sub-goal of that is negotiating the regional agreement. I'm not sure that should stay. Perhaps replacing that with a school facility plan would be
I
important.
think that would be in keeping with that. I think we're going to have to, based on how things play out, how do we accomplish that goal given the current status? That's sort of a moving target at the moment, but I do think it's important to continue. I think as a board, given the actions that have been taken, I think it's important for us to reaffirm, and I think the board has done this in the past, but we're going to have to show leadership in terms of how we accomplish that.
Yep.
How we take that on.
The other thing that came up last year was the single-use plastics. I think we need to continue to plan for how we're going to deal with that in terms of making sure we get the information out to all of our
As a placement
departments and, start talking to the schools and golf and...
To your point, we have a working group established. Pat Armstrong's been leading that with the citizen petitioners, and we are working within that group to voluntarily meet the, what I would say, the expectations of the citizen petitioners. We have a document that I think probably not next year we could live up to, but within 2 years I think we'd be, because it affects our vendor procurement too on a few things.
Well,
but,
that's right.
But Pat's actively working that with the intent that whether it were to pass or not, if the board so wished that that's the direction we would go, we'd be ready to go that direction.
Well, in terms of the goals, not to micromanage, but it's just something that sometimes these things get put off our radar, and then we don't have the funding in the budget cycle to make it
So
happen.
to your point, though, which this is a really good follow-up. The reason why we went to the Invisio platform is because there is a lot of activity that goes on that you would never normally see unless you were looking into it. So we are able to give you the updated reports, and the staff. This year's focus is to continuously ensure that they're all updating. And some staff is far better at this than others, parts of the staff. So you could see the progress real time as it goes through, and that was the intent of putting it out here like this, so you can check in on that to see where things are. And then the report. Chris, what's the frequency of the report that gets run up?
Every Friday.
Every Friday, yeah.
Yeah, we're getting those now.
Yeah.
Thank you. That works so
That's
good.
great.
So we're trying on all these fronts to meet these
Well,
desired
there's a lot of
lines.
balls. That's why
There
I
is
throw
a
it
lot,
out there,
yeah.
because
To Mr. Forrest's point, one of the things, because we just got the visioning money from this town meeting, we were waiting to hear from the Cape Cod Commission about DLTA matching funding for that. We were indicating that did not get done. So we're going to just go out on our own on that, because I think it is important with all of the big topics that have been in front of us, that we have a plan to where we should go based on what the citizens have to say over the next decade. And that's really a common thing that communities do on about an every 10-year basis, is to do this. You literally go into every pocket, every neighborhood of the community to bring this information forward and try to align what your business is strategically, long-term and short-term, to get to that community that the people have told you they would like to see. It's a big undertaking, but I know Mrs. Green is ready to launch sometime this fall on that. So we're excited about that, because it will give us that blueprint that we talk about as to what the citizens would like to see their community be.
Good. And one other thing is the continue to investigate electronic voting. I think that's something, especially based on, I know we've discussed it before, and I know that we had the charter review or the committee look at it, but based on our last town meeting, I think that it would have saved a lot of time. So I think that that's something that we should continue to look at.
Okay, anyone else? I have a question for you, Chris, on water,
Yes, sir.
which is number 6. Under focus area 6.4, is that where it says continue to invest in community partnership to advance initiatives? Does that include the Dennis, Yarmouth, Harwich
It does.
potential wastewater facility?
It does.
Okay, and I see that that's on track, but only at about a third of where it's got to go.
Mr. Chairman, while you're on that,
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful, as the Board of Water Commissioners as well, is to continually, is put together a schedule of when we can get updates on key things related to water.
It's every quarter, Mr.
Every
Forrest.
quarter.
Yeah,
But-
Mr. Colby will send out a memo next, for next
Okay.
meeting.
That's good. And we can lay out some topics. I also think wastewater, that aspect of water needs to be important. We have a Water Resources Advisory Committee that's working very, very hard. I'd like to see them at some point come before us and hear from town staff as well as that committee on some key components. We've got to, we're literally looking at a fall town meeting with some big decisions may have to be made, and the more we can get on top of this and the more we can get ahead of the game, I think the better off it's going to be for all of us. So I'm just concerned about town meeting creeping up on us, having to make some decisions, but the public really has been we're somewhat in the dark about some of the things that we need to make recommendations on. My big thing is Rich and staff have been working on a cost recovery plan for wastewater. I think they've done a great job. They've done a lot of work. There have been a lot of briefings and discussions. At some point, we've got to get that out into the public arena and give it sufficient time. I know they've been getting good input from other board members, including myself, so I think that's a key part of the conversation. So, to me, water, we can't have enough. I'm glad to give up a couple of golf agenda items for water. Golf is important, I get it, but water to me should be right up there at the top of the list. Mr. Chairman, so I'll get off my soapbox.
I think I was the last one to meet individually with Rich to get an update on wastewater on Monday, and if I'm not mistaken, he is planning on coming before us with a presentation soon, so that he can speak not only to the board but the public at large. And there's been a lot of outreach meetings scheduled, and some of them have already taken place. I think Mark and Tracy were at the one also at the Cultural Center back in June. That was very well attended, and
yes.
a lot of important questions were asked, and generally, I think people were supporting the overall concept of a regional solution, but not everybody. Some people wanted to maintain autonomy and have control of their individual property and using innovative and alternative technologies. But it is an important issue, and we have to get that out before the public, and vet it before the board. A critical piece of that, obviously, will be how to fund it, and look at the cost of doing it in conjunction with the other two towns versus the cost of doing it alone.
I just have one question on this report, the Water Division study. It seems that there's a large majority of that has some disruption. Is there a quick answer to the why?
That's under 6.2.
Yeah.
I can bring it up.
I don't need, I just didn't know.
I'd also offer if Jeff is here and is willing to address it.
Yeah, there was about 40% under the yellow-coded disruption.
I think that has, Jeff Colby, Public Works Director. I think that has to do with the timeframes we've set for the different goals, and that probably needs to be revisited. We had a pretty aggressive schedule as we began this year with the different projects and tasks to accomplish within the last year, and we've been giving the regular updates as part of that, but part of that probably needs to look at the timeframes and whether we had a reasonable expectation that within 1 year we'd accomplish the wide, extensive work that we need to do. So it's not that there's things that are off track. There's a lot of things moving. It's just a matter of is it getting accomplished within the timeframes we initially set.
Okay, great. No, I mean, I look at those as a snapshot and think, is there something that we need to do to help move it forward, but seems like it's moving.
I'm with you, Tracy. I think water, particularly the capital side, needs to be a priority. It's another area that we need to focus on because there are aspects of our system that are in need of dramatic improvement.
Well, we've talked for a few years knowing that we're going to have to increase our rates, which we haven't done in 20 years. So that's been mentioned several times, but, maybe having a plan would be helpful.
Yeah, that's part of the master plan that one of our consultants is working on, the overall, like, the water protection, securing additional resources, all the long-term maintenance. One of the key elements that sometimes gets missed in understanding this stuff is we've had a lot of turnover in some departments. Water is one of them. The director retired. We've had 2 senior administrative support personnel recently retire. I should be authorizing Mr. Colby tomorrow to start the hiring process on the 3rd person that will replace on the administrative side. So one of the things is if you don't have enough foot soldiers to do the job, everything kind of comes to a screeching halt. And so water as a division has been under a significant level of turnover, and we are finally, 2 of the 3 administrative positions have been staffed. We're happy with the results to date. There's a 3rd one that needs to get done, and I'll authorize that on tomorrow, Mr. Colby. I know you've been asking me about that. So that's one of the key situations, and some of the personnel issues come a little bit more public to you because of a particular desire line or an interest, but clearly water is one that we now have the human element in place to start moving in some pretty quick directions on that.
And the CPA percentage, having that discussion at some point in time, and whether or not this board supports transition to a water fund.
That's a big one.
We've been talking about that for a while, too.
Well, that all comes as part of the discussion of how do we move forward, what kind of funding mechanism is sustainable.
But if we're having a fall town meeting, if it's something this board supports, then I think that getting that percentage set to the side, so when we do go to bond, I don't want to, we wait, and then we don't have the money. So I think if we could have that percentage set to a side, in advance of the actual borrowing or the actual project coming up, we could utilize that instead of...
Right, that's why the cost recovery discussion needs to become a priority and soon.
Yeah, Rich and his team will be in front of the board soon. I do know that we've had internal dialogues about this particular conversation. I communicated with Representative Whalen today about the progress in Boston on the home rule. It's slowly making its way, but of course the legislature hasn't even approved the budget yet, so that takes precedent over all of our...
But regardless of the tri-town, we need to prepare our own community.
Right.
It's not, to me, they don't go together.
No, that's a 2-step process, though. It's a town meeting and then a ballot question, so that's all going to unfold rather rapidly.
I think to Norm's point, they do go together. I don't think you can talk about either a regional approach or doing it ourselves without knowing how we're going to fund it.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying we don't need to wait for the tri-town plan to talk about how we're going to pay for wastewater.
These are all moving towards very soon.
No, we don't, because you're not necessarily, the voters or even this board are yet to make a decision on which way they want to go. But the funding sources, what I'm assuming, would be the same regardless of which option you took.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's some...
And there's some policy issues, too, in terms of You know, are you gonna try to keep it off the tax rolls entirely? Is part of it gonna go on? You know, there's a lot of options, and I'm sure Rich will lay all that out for us.
Well, built into this entire discussion is a question about, all right, we have the cost of a treatment plant and the cost of the distribution system being billed out to Yarmouth residents or users, or the whether it's part of the tri-town or an individual system. You know, we've got a lot of decisions to make. And you know, what to me, part of that involves, okay, is the revenue sources that we would use to pay for these things, are they identifiable for our community right away? You know, one of the big question marks is, you know, the new tax schemes that have been devised, and how we would gain access to those funds. And I'm concerned that in a partnership arrangement, revenues that we may have generated or our community may have generated get assigned to somebody else.
Well, there's two different pots of money there that we need to deal with. There's the regional 2.75%, and then there's the increase that expanded the 2% more and includes all Airbnbs and short-term rentals. So there's two different things there. But I think that is this pot of money. The group is working on the managing documents on how that will be dispersed. That necessarily won't all come back to our community, our money. That's the way that that legislation was done. I mean, obviously, I fight for it, but everybody wants it. But our money, any increase to that revenue is another discussion we have to have, whether or not we want to put that to the side. I feel strongly that we should be putting that to the side for wastewater. But there's a lot of things, I just feel like, you know, some of these discussions, though, we've had for a really long time, and if we had acted before, we'd already be generating revenue. Regardless, we know we're going to have to do something. I don't think we have to identify the exact number to start planning for it.
Well, a lot of work's been done, so it's just a question of beginning the dialogue with the board. And I'm ready for it, as I know you are.
So I get your point now, Tracy. So you're talking about not the wastewater component, which is going to be handled on a regional level, but the other increase being dedicated to wastewater and then appropriated once we decide what form that wastewater system is going to take.
Right, there's an expanded pot of money under the rooms tax that will accrue
makes sense.
directly to Yarmouth. The question is do we want to segregate it into a particular account, or reserve, or capital for clean water, whatever? That's a conversation that we need to have. But I do believe that Rich and the staff have done a lot of work to give us plenty
He
to
has
mull over.
projections on that. He already has his projections on that, and as well as the CPA. So Sandwich, Mike, they took, we have a 3% CPA number now. They reallocated some of that to our wastewater. So those are the things I'm talking about now, because, you know, if you bring the whole plan at town meeting at one time, I think it's going to be, you know, these are things that perhaps we could have a discussion, and if it's even something we want to do, you know, there's going to be a lot of work talking to, obviously, Open Space Committee. They're going to be resistant. You know, there's probably going to be some resistance to it. So I think we need
this
to
speaks
start
to my point. The sooner we get on this, the better. Yeah, it's a priority. We've got to jump on it.
I don't think we need to wait to see the whole plan.
No, I don't think so either. I think
you can start dedicating it to a fund.
Yeah, and then when we do have a project, we're ready, and we have enough money to pay, you know, the annual bond or whatever. So.
Okay, anybody else on goals? All right.
My goal is to achieve these this year.
So we'll take another look at this when we hit the agenda review and see when we're going to have this pop up again, and then hopefully Eric will be able to participate as well. So I'm going to move off then to, we already advanced the DY discussion, so we can skip that and go to board and committee actions. Do you have any appointments, Mark?
Yeah, first of all, accepting a resignation from Duncan Oliver.
Oh.
That's a tough one,
Yeah,
yeah.
that is, yeah. I
Move with
pref-
great gratitude for his many years of dedication and service.
There you go. I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye. Anyone opposed? No, he's done an extraordinary job. He really has. I think we should probably bring him in for some individual recognition. I would. I mean, the guy has been amazing in terms of sharing historical knowledge and educating people on local history.
Yeah, I would agree. The next item, I have two committee appointments dealing with the Historical Commission. One is to appoint Robert Kelly to the Historical Commission. And this is the appointment to fill the unexpired term running through July 31st, 2021.
So moved.
Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. The next item involves the rest of the Historical Commission. And we have Kathy Heislop, George Slama, Beverly Bashan. I'm recommending that we reappoint Ms. Heislop, Mr. Slama to the Historical Commission. This is an appointment for a 3-year term, or reappointment for a 3-year term, running through July 31st, 2022. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries. And to reappoint Beverly Bashand as an alternate member to the Historical Commission for a 1-year term running through July 31st, 2020.
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We now have a reappointment to the Conservation Commission. Up for reappointment is Rick Bishop. And so I'm recommending that we reappoint Mr. Bishop as a member of the Conservation Commission. This is an appointment that would be for a 3-year term running through June
30th.
2022.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is reappointment to the Mid-Cape Cultural Council. This is Rachel Youngling, and so I'm recommending that we appoint Rachel to a 1-year unexpired term on the Mid-Cape Cultural Council running through June 30th, 2020.
I'll move that appointment.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries, and that concludes my recommendations on appointments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Next, we have approval of minutes, and there's some executive session minutes, so I'll take them separately. The regular minutes are for December 18th of 2018, January 15th of 2019, and January 29th of 2019. I have a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. I have a motion. I think we'll have an these executive session minutes to approve and hold. June 4th of 2019, June 10th of 2019, June 18th of 2019, and June 22nd of 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, those are all approved. Upcoming agenda review is next.
Well, we just put a lot on their plate.
Yeah, it's a little light right now, but we have a staff meeting tomorrow, so it'll get populated pretty quickly.
So we're looking at the 30th, right? Next one?
Yeah.
We have Water Division Quarterly Update, which was talked about earlier, closing documents for Yankee Village, Yarmouth Permitting Guide presentation, Fall Town Meeting discussion.
It'll also be added, it's a Mass DOT communication on the speed reductions for Center Street. There's some motions I need to have presented to you to take a vote on to do that. That's the long-awaited speed study that was done, and we've got approval now from Mass DOT to make those adjustments.
Okay.
So.
So that's on Center Street?
Yeah, Center Street in
That'll be on for the
Homerstock Lane.
30th.
Yeah, there's a series of motions that DOT requires.
Rich, were you planning on coming in that day?
We're ready to go.
So we're gonna have an update, wastewater update.
We can start that process
On
then.
that one, we can put that on.
What day?
The 30th.
30th. You like water, you got water.
I love water. Water's my
We'll see if we can find an offsetting golf thing for you.
Yeah, don't get me going.
Okay, so we got that.
DPW facility or
The
A report.
facility update?
the
We have
facility,
Jeff
there's a
coming.
meeting Thursday night, right, Jeff?
We have Jeff coming up.
Yes, there is a meeting tomorrow night for the DPW Building Committee, and we're prepared to come talk with the board about what that project looks like, and we're hoping that July the 30th would work. It sounds like you've got a rather full meeting, but
No.
it's important for us to get before you before we reach out to the community with some of the additional public outreach we need to do for that project.
I'm good for that.
We can do DPW. And then we'll talk from there. No meeting on the 6th and the 13th. We have opioid litigation update. I think the people should know we are not actively engaged in opioid litigation at this time, but who knows? And we have substance abuse action plan presentation on August 13th. And that's pretty much as far as we go with scheduled items. I guess one of the
We're going to have to
things,
put the goals back on there and the
I don't think we
committee
should put the
handbook.
goals on the 30th. I think that's kind of a lot with what else we have. Why don't we try for the goals on August 13th?
And the committee handbook will have to be
And the
there.
committee handbook. We could do those maybe, Anna, what do you think, on the 13th?
Yeah,
And Mr. Dwelly's going away party too on the 13th.
really?
Be
So
my
we're going to
last-
do it at night
my
at
last
6
board
PM?
meeting.
Yeah, can you do it when we can actually go? Can I ask that? You're not going to
You
throw your
have
own
to
party?
do it at a
My
time.
going away party is being present at the board meeting.
Oh,
Oh, God.
We'll have pizza
You
afterwards.
don't have to do this anymore, you know? You've got another job.
So we got goals and we got the handbook on August 13th, right? And then we'll see what happens. So that's your last meeting, Chris?
It will be, yes, sir.
that'll be a sad day.
It will be.
All right. So can we get some alcohol for that?
Yeah. Or we can bring the opioid discussion. Does Chris get a chair? Does
He's
Chris
got
get a-
one. They
he's
can
got
give it to him,
There
yeah,
you go.
sure. You got a couple
Heat
extras
up one up in
upstairs.
his office.
No, we got plenty of those leftover wood ones. We can give him one of those
There you
wood
go.
ones.
There you go. Put a little black on
From
it.
Yarmouth, Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
What's the plan there?
you can always break your contract, Chris. I can show you how to do that.
Yeah, without being charged.
Yeah.
Doesn't make you a bad person if you break your contract. Sometimes it's economically beneficial to do that. So
We have
anybody
more
have
eating
anything else you want to
establishments in
put
town.
on here, even if it's to, placeholder going forward, Norm?
Well, the 30th, I mean, we'll have knowledge of what the Dennis vote has been.
Yeah, that's going to be on the 23rd.
Yeah, and we'll have a variety of things that, I think we've got to have an agenda item that deals with what's our path forward.
Okay, well, okay. Not necessarily, though, on that date, right? Because we'll want to see what the fallout is and whether extensions are applied for or not, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to have some discussion on the
Right.
30th, that it's not necessarily,
Oh, I see what you're saying, okay.
yeah.
Pack your tent clothes.
What?
For a tent meeting.
Oh. Tent meeting,
Like you're going camping. Come to me like you're going camping. Ready for a tent.
You know what happened at the last tent meeting? Were you there?
Yeah.
Were you old enough to vote then?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, Mike, thanks.
Oh, you're still in the sandbox?
I was
What they did in that last tent meeting is they had the thing until after dark, and what happened is a lot of the elderly people left. Because, you know, driving and
It was hot.
half of them can't see at night, and they all left, and that's why they got the vote. So, watch out for the scheduling if there's a tent meeting in terms of the time.
Well, I think there were statements that they probably wouldn't have a 10 meeting. They wouldn't have a district vote.
We'll see.
And
Yeah.
so.
I've been to two of them. I know you weren't old enough for the first one. The other one was in the high school, and it was on a Saturday. It was NDY in the auditorium. So, I've been to two. All right. Anything further? We're going to have a placeholder on the schools per Norm's request. And what about you, Mark? You have anything you want
No, I
to put
just,
on Tracy?
Well, I mean, we're going to have the wastewater discussion, so
Yeah, wastewater's next meeting.
I think some things will come from that.
Okay, and then Dan, if anything comes up, you know where I'm at, right? So, all right, so we're gonna go to individual items next. Who wants to go first?
I have one thing I want to read.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to just read a statement from the Exaros family and the Big Nick's Ride group. That it's been 10 years since Nick left the town of Yarmouth to serve his nation, returned home under the American flag. The Exaros family and everyone at Big Nick's Ride thanks everybody the Cape Cod Fallen 16 thank the citizens of Yarmouth for their outpouring of love and support over the past 10 years. Every year we ride to remember our fallen and thank the living. We appreciate and encourage everyone to come out and support the riders on Sunday, July 21st, which is this Sunday. The ride starts at 10 a.m. at Bourne, which is at the Sheriff's Department, and comes down 6A and will end it'll end at DY somewhere between 11 and 11:30. This year, they have a new contest for the most patriotic home. So the best display around the 35-mile route will be given a special prize. And so they just want to thank everybody over the years of supporting it, and hopefully everybody comes out on Sunday. Obviously, there'll be a bit of a traffic delay there in those areas, so the public should also be aware.
Okay, good. Norm?
Nothing.
You good? Mark?
I'm all set, Mike, thanks.
Okay, I don't have anything either. So go to town administrators items. You got some consent agenda things?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there was one of that's kind of out of the ordinary is just a minor adjustment to the charge for the age-friendly community team. They since they've been established by the original charge, I think, which you have in your packet, in 2016, the state and the governor's office has really elevated that conversation. There's a fair amount of grant money flowing to the different cities and towns on this particular topic. So what that group has asked is that to raise their profile a bit, to pull it out of the Council on Aging and put it reporting directly to the Board of Selectmen as they do, but under they would report to me, or I would report to them, I suppose, and together we would help to enact the policies related to this initiative across all town staff department type operations. So I support the initiative. We've done some really good things, but I think being where it is housed as a charge, it kind of keeps it restricted to those activities. So I think this is a good move, and I support that. So I'd ask for your support on that as part of the consent agenda. That's the one I'm handing out to you is the revised language that talks about report to the town administrator's office.
I would think this would be under community services, but, I mean, I know all the different aspects. They look at all the interactions with the town.
That's right.
I just get concerned that you have too much on your plate, and, this is very important, but we have some really big issues. And last year, we had a really hard time getting to them. You were really strapped. So adding something else to your plate, I think, is problematic.
It's a team effort. I will enlist the support of the director. She has. We've talked about this. Everything that we do in the administrator's office, we incorporate a team approach, and I think, though, it is important to get the bandwidth needed to be able to move forward in this direction. So I'm personally fine with it. So, but I appreciate the sentiment. There is a lot of stuff that's in front of me.
I'm afraid it's a slippery slope, because there's going to be a lot of people who be like, I think we should work for the town administrator directly. We've never worked that way. So, not that I don't want to advance their cause, but I just think it belongs under a department head.
I think your point's well taken, but if you're willing to take this on, I don't see any reason why we should object. It sounds like the department head will be playing an active role in helping.
Yeah, one of the under the Human Resources Department, which reports in our line, is the Citizens Commission for Disabilities. So it all kind of plays together under that guise of the human entity that is our workforce. So, I'm, like I said, I appreciate that. I do think, though, that when you look at the frameworks and what the spaces they're operating in, I touch every single one of these, and there's certainly initiatives on many of these fronts that I have a personal interest to advance as well. Because I think it's important based on the dialogue I've heard the board talk about. One of the big ones is housing. I sit as the chairman of the Affordable Housing Trust, but there's other housing initiatives that are coming to my attention that we should, as a community, look to the board to bring to your attention on congregate housing and different models. I mean, I go by the Brewster Windsor facility on a regular basis, and that's slated to be sold. And, there's interesting movements in the housing market arena that I think Yarmouth could really do some, innovative ideas there for what the future of that kind of housing. So a lot of these things I'm going to touch anyways. So that team has a lot to offer in those arenas.
You made reference to the Disabilities Committee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're getting close on that.
Okay,
Yep.
we're getting close
Yep.
to kicking them off.
Right.
Okay, that'd be good. Be nice to get that done before Chris leaves.
I'm not sure if it'll get done before he leaves, but it won't be that soon right after that. We'll get there, though.
Anything else?
No, other than that, it's there is a communication there relative to the state in this Captain Cliff Vacation Condominium, but State Council at DHCD has reviewed that. The documentation's there for the chairman to review, and then the rest of them are donations that we see on a regular basis that come through every year.
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Town administrator updates.
One of the things that's on our normal standing items on the agenda is the DPW facility. I know the meeting is tomorrow night that they're angling for, but we're in a good position, and we'll bring Mr. Colby in front of you shortly to get, it's been a while since you've had a briefing on this, but they're in position, correct me if I'm not wrong here, Jeff, that you'd like to perhaps see an opportunity at a fall town meeting for the project, and he'll explain that to you. But it's exciting. There's been a lot of hard work done on that. Cape Tech, I was up there today. That continues to move forward. The building is going at really good speed. I will say that we did ratify the teacher's contract there. The school committee got a settlement with them. So that's actually good news because that was locked up for almost a year. I'm not sure what that means, implication for other teachers' unions across the Cape, but certainly that's a big one to have settled. So I know Superintendent Sanborn is very pleased about that. And then water resource planning, we have another DHY meeting on Friday. We're looking to bring the 3 towns together sometime early September to update you on where we are at with that, and then trying to align all of our initiatives for the same fall town meeting activity that we're looking to do.
I think the Friday meeting has been postponed, Dan.
Oh, I haven't seen it. Did you get one? Okay.
Bulletin on that one, yeah, to the following Friday,
Right.
26th.
Works better for me. So other than that, as you know, we just mentioned Mr. Dwelly's last day is August 15th, thereabouts?
Yes. Yep.
Very sad to hear that, but we wish him well for sure, and we're starting to work on restructuring the plan going forward in the future, so we'll have something to put forward to you shortly on that topic.
Any update on HR?
Yeah, so we begin an initial round of interviews on Friday. Pretty good-sized candidate pool, about 40 candidates applied, potentially.
40 applied.
Yeah.
We're going to bring in close to a dozen for an initial interview beginning Friday, as Dan mentioned. Yep.
So we're moving, yeah. And you heard a really good update on golf. I'm really excited about the opportunity to bring the golf consultant in. And, you know, there's the 5-year business plan, coupling that with the marketing that needs to get done to hit those milestones. As you can see, that is going to be kind of the cornerstone of what success could look like for the golf operation. And everybody's excited to get going on that. I mean, as good as the news was tonight, it's a long way to go. We've had some exceptionally good weekends, unlike the last 2 cycles of golf in the spring and early summer where it rained, it seemed like, on every weekend. So Mother Nature's been cooperating to some great extent, but it's a very, very tenuous relationship with that. But in general, it's positive trending, and this is the next logical step, and I look forward to getting that work over the finish line. They'll ask for some interviews, and we'll have the solid plan going forward. So,
when do you think you're going to have some feedback from that study?
I'd anticipate, because they're going to be on the ground and wrap that up, the ground level work in early August, and I'd say by late August we'll have some preliminary information. I think so, yeah. Enough that if there's certain things that are off course that we should correct, and certainly we'll talk to the consultants about that, but certainly we've asked them, there's a certain, as we go through the budget process, because we'll be issuing those instructions to the staff shortly. I mean, all of this information is critical to moving in the budget building process, so we'd like it to certainly have some good information to us by September, late September, for sure, so.
Okay.
There's been a lot of work in this arena done. They had told us, we're still trying to track this down, but about 10 years ago, they did some kind of business consulting for us. So we're trying to find that in the files and work with them, so nobody seems to have any institutional memory of that, but that's a long time ago, really, in relative terms, I suppose. So so we'll see what it is, but Keegan's work is certainly a good starting point for them. So it's not like it's a huge lift to launch from the beginning for these folks, and this is what they do for a living. So
Are you or is anybody else going to be meeting with the Golf Enterprise Committee to give them an update
Yeah.
as to this year-end review?
We're always mindful of making sure that you have the first glance at what comes out, but that was part of the process at the next called meeting, that now that we've shared this information with you, we can go to the Golf Enterprise Committee, give them some detail. And the general membership, it's probably very shortly, sometime, they're always open to the general membership, but we'll have a communicating document, year-end wrap-up. I think the numbers are pretty close to being finalized, but as soon as that's done, that'll be one of the initiatives Scott has to do, is to communicate with the members how we finish the year.
Mm-hmm. So they'll have kind of like a meeting like we went to before at, where was it, Flax Pond, where they'll have the committee and the membership.
Yeah, we can, probably in August, we could schedule that, because by that time, we'll have done our groundwork with the consultant, and we'll have a better understanding of what the next couple months looks forward to, and then we'll fully have the Golf 2019 wrap-up done by then, so it's a good idea, so.
Do you have any updates on any of the other items?
No, I think the school agreement, where we stand on that on a Thursday night, we know what we'll be doing there at 4 o'clock. I'll get some of those final details to you tomorrow, whatever it is that the agenda is, and finalized locations. And
I'm not sure that invitation's still open from, do you?
He said he'd be there.
Yeah, he said
he would, but
yeah. We'll see who else is there, right? But other than that, I will say Carl Von Hohn and his team has had a really good dialogue going with Dr. Scomo on the whole shark front. And at some point in the very near future, I've asked him to provide to you an update as it relates to what this town is doing on both sides of our shores to address that issue. We've Dr. Scomo's been kind enough to loan to the town some buoys, and that coupled with some of the other work that we're going to procure on our own, and then what the towns next to us are doing, we'll be able to give you a map as to where I guess the detector buoys are located on both sides of our shores. And what I would say is I think we've had in the last week or so 4 unconfirmed sightings of something that resembles a shark in the Lewis Bay area. So we're working internally to come up with the strategy for best communicating to the public. We finalized some details on that today. One of the problems is we don't have any, the reports that have come to us have been unsubstantiated. They've been people that have been out on their boats have called in. It goes quickly to our response team. They go out, take a look, and we haven't been able to get a picture or any confirmed sightings, but it's certainly something that we've talked to Dr. Scomo about. He's going to send some of his marine staff down to work with our staff to understand what identification activities look like and how to do that. So it's an evolving process for us.
So they didn't confirm the one in Lewis Bay?
Well, it's when I say confirm, because there's no visual proof of it, and there's no, somebody with a skill set that you would like to have to be able to say that. It's been reported to us that there have been a shark sighting.
Has there
what
been,
kind it is, we don't know yet. So
has there been any talk about the sailing program? And
that's part of our communication with Dr. Scomo. We've been having ongoing about, what does this mean, and and what do you know? Because we've just procured the software we needed to analyze. We offered to go out to the buoys and pick them up and do the data download for them, so the state doesn't have to be in that. It helps them get real-time data to us faster. So that's all kind of evolving, and we'll make a decision based on what the buoys are telling us and the observations our staffs are making and what comes back to us. But it's certainly a conversation I had as recently as this afternoon with Director Von Hohn as to what should we be doing in the Lewis Bay area with the sailing program and whatnot. So.
Well, Chris, I don't think they're going to have sharks where you're going, right? So you won't have to deal with that.
That's a concern.
Land sharks.
So what an agenda.
They have a 2-town regional school district, though, so.
What an agenda. We got golf, wastewater, sharks.
It's true.
What does this town come to?
How about a motion to adjourn?
Do we have that motion? You making that motion?
making
Do
that
we have a
motion.
second? All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you. Let the